Welcome to another episode of Self to Society. My name is Dennis Gable. I'm your host, and I have my iPad. I love words. I think one of the most beautiful things about language is that words have meaning, and those words don't always translate to other languages. I live in Arizona, and so we're very close to Mexico. I don't speak Spanish very well, but I do know that there are certain phrases in Spanish that don't translate well to English and vice versa. And that's fascinating to me. And what it makes me think of is human relationships. In many ways, we are individually our own countries with our own language and our own experience and our own dialects and our own cultural preferences, our own ways of doing things. And that means that when your tribe or when you, and when I say your tribe, I literally mean like your person, like when you as an individual collide with another individual and you try to make sense of all of the things, it's going to be challenging. And some things you won't say in the same way as somebody else would say them. Or maybe when they say something specific to you, they have a meaning and a context based on their perspective, their upbringing, their own experiences, and it is different than yours, or it means something different to them than it would to you as the speaker and as the listener. I think that's also something else to take into consideration is when you're speaking, you're literally cognitively creating while the vibration is exiting and sounding like words. But when you're listening, you're having to take into consideration tone, tense, perspective, experience, trauma, intentionality. Like, as a listener, you have a lot to embrace as opposed to just, not as opposed to just, because I believe that speaking is equally as challenging because we're trying to probably be considerate of tense, tone, perspective, trauma, what this person could hear what we say. Anyway, it's fascinating to me, languages in that way. And a few days ago, I can't see on my notes specific. Oh yeah, November 29th, I wrote in my notes, "Truth is unilaterally objective." And I've been trying to break this phrase. And what's fascinating about this phrase is you can use truth, unilateral, or unilaterally, and objective in any place in this statement, and it's true. They all are correct. If with all of the words I've ever had fun, orchestrating into stories or poems or a joke at a bar or whatever, this might be the first time that I have found three words that have the same meaning no matter what order you put those words in. Truth is unilaterally objective. Objectivity is unilaterally true. And unilateral objectivity is truth. I think I said all those. I could go on and on and on with different phrases and ways to say this because for 2 full days now, I've been thinking about these three words. And what got me here is really how I started this episode is words are fascinating, and you could talk to 10 different people about the same subject. Religion is probably an easy one. You could have same people who theoretically believe the same thing talk about one story in any of the religious texts or scriptures, and their ability to recommunicate what it is you're talking about is going to be different all across those 10 people. Their truth, what they unilaterally, meaning within themselves, and objectively, meaning based on their viewpoint, their perspective, their experience, will create their truth. That truth is theirs. That truth is not universal insofar as what is true for me is not necessarily true for you and vice versa. This makes communicating wildly interesting and only challenging if there is a holdfastness to an individual or unilateral truth as not objective but as concrete. When that happens, communicating is much more challenging than when we approach communication from the frame reference of every story has three truths. Well, every story related to two people. Let's just say there's my truth, their truth, and the truth. And all are true objectively based on whose perspective we're looking from. So if I'm telling a story, my version of it is my truth. If somebody else is telling the same story, but their version of it, that is also true. And then if you were to have a video camera record the conversation or the experience, you would find that that also is true. And so what got me here is thinking about how simple the world would be if truth was truly objective. Meaning, if my truth didn't have to ever equal your truth or vice versa. We see so much division in the workplace, in communities, in families, in friend groups, in churches, in schools, in truthfully, any place where humans have community and communicate through that community, there could be so much more unity if two people could sit in a conversation and say, I hear how you got there on your ending point of your phrase or statement or belief. Here's how I got to mine. And those two people could go, I'm glad that you landed where you did. And that becomes the unifying truth. And that's an interesting thing to think of. This whole episode, by the way, I had these words in front of me, and I didn't really know what direction I would want to travel with this idea. But we're getting close to the holidays. We're in the holiday season, and there's a lot that goes wrong at holiday dinners and holiday parties and gatherings with friends and family, because we don't take our truth as unilaterally objective. We push our truth onto other people as if its truth is not subjective to anybody else's experience, but that it is just blanketed truth. This is similar to the idea of trauma. Truth and trauma in many ways have a lot of parallels in this way, where if two people are telling the same story and what was traumatic to them, those things may be very different. The fact that they have trauma is relevant and concrete in that matter. And so, but my trauma doesn't equal yours and vice versa, but that doesn't mean that they're not both traumas. And I've mentioned this before, one human could have a lot of trauma because they were poor, and another person could have a lot of trauma because their family was too wealthy. Both are true. What's challenging in human relationship and engagement is that it's hard to believe, if your trauma comes from being poor, it's hard to believe that being rich can also be traumatic, as an example. And so it would be easy to say, well, your trauma is not as big as my trauma, or your problems aren't as big as my problems, or however that tends to play out. We do a much better job of beating each other over the head with words that will never have the impact we want them to have. When I share a truth with somebody and I want to sway their opinion, it's selfish. It means I want to sway their opinion. Most of the time, it wouldn't even suggest that the person you're in conversation with, or that I'm in conversation with, is interested in even considering a different opinion. But we share things like that in order to sway somebody's opinion, and it almost never works. Arguing about religion or politics or nuances in relationships almost never works, because it takes time and investment and a shared vulnerability to hear and see two people from different sides and be open-handed listeners for there to be a true, empathetic might not be the right word, a true coming together of a willingness to hear somebody else's side or opinion or truth or trauma. As we are in the holiday season, these are the things that continue to rip families apart. They're the thing that rips relationships apart. They're the things that rip business relationships apart. Like an inability to be open-handed and soft with somebody else's story or words or beliefs or whatever it's in some ways an act of defiance, meaning I am in defiance, not allowing your version or your perspective or your words to be a part of my current worldview or my current opinion. But if we can be open-handed and open-eared and soft and without ego, I think we have an ability to survive the holiday season and relationships in general without causing so much friction, without causing or triggering a deeper well of separation, space, negative space, problem, trauma, anxieties, whatever those may be. So I want to challenge you to think about your truth and its unilateralness, its unilateral nature. If you think about your truth and the fact that it is in fact your truth, is it fair to say that your truth is objective to your experience and to your opinions and to your desires and to the things that you want to hold fast to? And is it also fair to assume that objectivity is unilaterally true to somebody else as well? And so you can't expect yourself to understand where everybody's coming from, regardless of the topic. And you can't expect people to be able to understand you always either quickly. I mean, that's why relationships are so challenging, is because and I'm super guilty of this, we want the good parts of the relationship to rise to the top early. And by good, I mean transparent, vulnerable, willing. I think we want those things to rise to the surface early in relationships. And the truth is that it takes time, and sometimes a very long time, for those aspects of communication and relationship to be the things that are the foundation. And we want them quickly. And I'm super guilty of that. But I'm learning as I try to practice a phrase that I came up with not too long ago, and that phrase is space creates peace and pressure creates chaos. As somebody who wants to create peace in my relationships, and I don't want to create tension or strife or problems or stress in any of my relationships, I've learned that my feelings, or what I would see as my opinion or my understanding or my truth, is only really as relevant as its universal truth, not its unilateral truth. And that's it's a very challenging lesson to learn as a 40-year-old adult. But it's for many reasons. As I step back into certain aspects of my faith, I want to step into them without my opinion being the thing that is driving these interactions, and I mean also my experience and my traumas and my all of that. Same thing in my relationship. I don't want all of the old shit that I've been through to be the preface or the foundation for how I'm able to love my new partner. And some of this feels impossible because we get stuck in loops, and I get stuck in loops. And so also with my son, I mean, him and I could sit and talk, and he's saying something that I'm not hearing correctly, and he's actually done this, is like, he said, "Dad, I'm saying it the best I can." and it's a learning that for him as well, he's only able to speak his truth to me in the objectivity of his experiences. And so this for me it's a multifaceted pursuit where I just want to get better at listening, and better at not projecting, and better at not putting my thoughts or feelings so heavily on other people, and also believing that I don't have to understand or know for there to be peace. I can just allow enough space to believe that what somebody is saying is probably their truth, and if it's their truth, it's not mine to control or manipulate or evolve or anything. It's only my responsibility to do that for myself. So my challenge is to be open-minded and open-handed with yourself and with others as you listen to them, as you want to be heard. All of us want to be heard and understood and seen and loved just for who we are, not because we have to make up some deficit for ourselves or somebody else. And I think that's kind of the long-running theme for me in this premise is I want to be seen and heard and understood outside of anybody's ability to objectively know my truth. There's a piano playing outside. If you can hear that, you're welcome. And so I guess with that kind of final statement, this all stems from my desire to be wanted and loved and understood simply because I exist. And I relate it to things like religion or these other topics because it's the same. Our pursuit in these things is the same. Before the piano player gets too loud, I'm going to go ahead and end the episode. I love y'all. Appreciate y'all. Thank you for being here and listening. Please share if you think that this could be helpful or thought-provoking for somebody you love. See you soon. Peace.